countries such as this are not prepared to do that. You'll see a lot of times in advertising, this isn't a myth, this is true. Well, I've explained over and over again that a myth is true. It's just another way of describing elements of nature. See? And if you don't understand that Greek mythology puts in a narrative story the conflicts and harmonies that flow through nature, then you'll do as most people who are religious do. They anticipate Revelation, and they anticipate that Revelation says that the seventh angel will literally throw a pot of something down on the earth, because that's what the Bible says. And if you think, that I'm not true about it, let me show you a beautiful piece of artwork. But this is the way people perceive. Here come the seven angels down, the stairs, and they each have a pot of something. This one's spilling out a little bit. And here you can make out people coming out of the muck or whatever you call that. And that is an artist's rendition of what goes with the scripture, which is Revelation 16:17, and the seventh angel poured out his vial into the air, and there came a great voice out of the temple of heaven from the throne saying, "It is done." Now this is what the majority of people believe the text would manifest itself like in a picture. And that is these people, seven angels with wings, walking down with a pot in their hand, and so forth. So it's very, very difficult then if I come along and, here you have it. They're ready to pour this soup on your head, and I'm coming along and saying, no, it's something different. To me, that picture is pretty, but it's pretty bizarre, and it's pretty silly. But, as I said, the overwhelming majority of Christian people believe, and you can't convince them otherwise because it's the way they're taught. So as long as you feel that this is a picture that goes with the text, you will never understand what I'm proposing to you to be what the Scripture is teaching you, and you'll never understand how the very essence of this entity we call God is played out. So, instead, Kathy, if you can look at that picture once again. Instead of the seventh angel coming down the stairs with this pot of stuff, what I am proposing is this is the seventh angel. Okay? This is the seventh angel, the great nebula Eta Carina. Now, I'm not saying that's an angel. All right? Oh, sure, it has the mythological angelic wings, and that's why, it's called that as a matter of identification. It's not an angel. It's a nebula. It's a giant star, two stars behind this cloud, which are the brightest things now, known to, and on the verge of a cataclysmic explosion that now science says will probably come sooner than later. I've been over and over and over this about why I connect the seventh angel of the book of Revelation to Eta Carina as the seventh angel. So you make your choice. Is it more reasonable that when the mythologists were writing this, they were writing about a cosmic event? You remember, this thing happened billions of years ago. So were they writing about that event? Or were they writing about seven figures with wings coming down holding a pot full of stuff? And because I had a lot of people say, oh, you don't want to go there, that guy's really off the wall. But I'm the one that's talking about a scientific principle here, while the others are talking about people with wings, with pots of stuff. Now, you have to decide which appears more reasonable. You can be skeptical about the whole thing, and that's perfectly fine too. But if we're talking about reason, could it be more reasonable to suspect maybe this astronomical event is what the writers were talking about, as opposed to the person with the wings? Now, the other point here that displays a real conflict within the church, and especially the Christian church, is a feeling towards Jesus Christ. Now, Jesus Christ is portrayed as the Lord. And the church, and many parts of it, not all of it, but many parts of it, are really in conflict with their feelings towards Jesus and their feelings towards war, such as the war in Iraq. Many Christian leaders who appear on television are strong supporters of the war in Iraq, and their reasoning is based on this: that a war between different factions in the Middle East, which becomes Armageddon, will herald the return, which Christianity says will be Jesus riding on a white horse through clouds. So, you see, this is the way they're taught. This is the way they teach. This is the way the people are instructed. So whenever they hear that there is some kind of conflict in the Middle East, it immediately portends for them the return of Jesus, which is difficult because now you've set up a real conflict. See, this is what the conflict is. The conflict is that they claim to be disciples of Jesus Christ. Jesus is their Lord. Yet they champion war, including this war in Iraq. See? And if you go on, it's a very amazing thing. But if you go on the internet and look up Jesus pacifist, type that into Google, Jesus pacifist, you'll see many Christian organizations saying, oh no, he wasn't a pacifist because he drove the money changers out of the temple and he turned the tables over. So what they're doing is they're finding any excuse they can to justify their beliefs. See? Now, it really is a difficult position for many Christians, and it's simply because one of the great tenets of our democracy was the separation of church and state, and yet many leaders have tried to break that down, which puts them right into the middle of this quandary and this conflict. They support the president because he's against abortion and gays, but then they feel an obligation to support the war. See? So this is what you get into when you get religion mixed up with politics. But yet, if a person, a Christian person, would come to me and say, well, you know, Jesus wasn't a pacifist because he turned over some tables, or you know, we support the president because he's against gays and abortion, then I would ask them to tell me, just one Christian person who believes that way, tell me, who would Jesus bomb? Which country would he drop a bomb on? What people would he torture? Whose house would Jesus blow up? Well, you know, it doesn't make any difference what you think of Jesus. What do you think? He's a real person? What do you think? He's a mythical person? Irrelevant. We're talking about the character of a being. You know, the character is portrayed as somebody who you can't be connected to any type of violent behavior against others that would kill or torture or maim or blow up or, you know, blow houses apart and, you know, all these people getting killed, which is what's happening over there. And of course, war is war, and I understand that. And that's an evil in and of itself. But what compounds it is when you have war, and then you have people who claim they're followers of Jesus who encourage it and support it. Now, so let me just give you a few scriptures here that kind of define the character of this person called Jesus. Matthew 5:44 says, he says, love your enemies. That means the admonition from Jesus would be, you don't kill Saddam Hussein, you love him. Say, you bless them that curse you. You do good to them that hate you. Say, so, you know, we should be sending over things and giving money and all of these wonderful things to people that, you know, attacked us. That's the Jesus flow. In Matthew 18:22, he says, how many times do I have to forgive? You know, I forgive a person once, he comes back and clobbers me. Jesus says you got to forgive 70 times 7. Of course, there's some, you know, numerology involved in that. But in other words, it's an unending forgiveness. Then it says about Jesus, a bruised reed shall he not break. How much of a pacifist is that? I pick up ants and move them across the floor because that's an awful long trip for somebody to walk. But I mean, here's a guy that wouldn't even break a reed this brute. And then he said in Luke 6:29, the famous one, if he hits you on one cheek, offer him the other. Turn the other cheek, And then all they that take up the sword, he says, shall perish with the sword. Now, does this sound, regardless of whether the person ever existed or not, does this sound to define a personality who you could say would lead you into a battle and dropping bombs on people, men, women, and children, and blowing up? Of course not. Of course not. And so, it always then strikes me, my goodness, how can these people come out on television and support, which they do. They support this war as an attack against Islamic, terrorists and all of this stuff. And I'm not saying that the Jesus teachings that are portrayed in the Bible are reasonable. They're not. I mean, if somebody punches you on the left side of your face, he says, turn the right side so he can take another shot. Well, that doesn't seem very reasonable. If your enemies come and do terrible things to you, that you want to go over and bring them some turkey and ziti tonight? I mean, the things are totally unreasonable. But the point is, if you're claiming that you're following this guy, then you're accepting this stuff. See? You can't turn around and say, oh, Jesus is Lord, like they all do, and then you support some kind of an attack. So you see the conflict that raises within the congregation, within the church. They support attacking and killing in Iraq. Now, I'm not saying all of them do, please, but there's a great number of them do. The Pat Robertsons do. The late Jerry Falwell did. There's this other big, real heavy-set guy on there that I can't even remember his name, but Hagee, yeah, he does. I mean, many of them really they want us now to go into Iran because that would really, start the conflict to bring back Jesus. So they support attacking and killing in Iraq, and yet they say Jesus is their Lord, and the biblical character of Jesus is the ultimate pacifist who forbids any kind of violent action or the type of action they support. And that's what happens when your religion becomes more important than your Lord. They know what it says. They know what the Bible says Jesus said. But they have to close those pages because they have to follow their Christian lead now, the born-again Christian lead. So the healing then that has to come from within. And this is what the great arrival, the great change would be. It would be the mind must change from within so people actually would turn away from religion. Whoa! That's going to take some kind of supersonic Eta Carina gamma blast for sure. But that's what's going to happen. That's what eventually will happen. Because people have to start looking within themselves and say, I don't really feel that way. I mean, Jesus is a little unreasonable, but I like the peaceful stuff rather than the blowing everybody up. Say, there was a famous comedian some years ago. I don't know if he's still on. His name is Mort Saul, and I'll show you a picture of him. He said something that really it was good way before his time. But he said this: people are getting away from religion and getting back to God. And that's true. And whatever you perceive God to be, God to you could be the air or the sun or whatever. That's your business. It's not my business. But it is a need to get. Once you get back to yourself and you start lighting the inner being of yourself up, you start thinking, gee, what is right? What are these things nice? Here's a perfect example. One of the three axes of evil that the president spoke of in his message was North Korea. Well, they had atomic weapons and they had to be stopped. Well, nobody wanted to mess with them because they weren't sure what they would do. So they went and they talked to them. Well, the problem seems to have gone away. Nobody got killed. Nobody got shot. Nobody's houses were destroyed. They sat down and talked. And they worked a deal. Do you know how easy it would have been for them to go over and sit down with Saddam and work out a deal? And 3,600 young 18, 19-year-old Americans who are in the ground now dead would be alive. Hundreds of thousands of Iraqi people would be alive, men, women, and children. Their homes, their businesses would be... All we had to do was sit down and talk to the guy. They've done it before. But there was something that propelled them on into this terrible event. And when religion, instead of religion coming up, and with the Hagees and the Robertsons and Falwells and these people, instead of them coming up and say the president, the country is, slamming it for doing such violent things, the religion now has to share the guilt of perpetuating this violence. And the reason that they have to share the guilt of perpetuating the violence is because they encouraged it. And the more important thing is that they have to stand guilty for totally misleading their followers on the true meaning of the Scriptures. As I showed you last week, it's nothing new for religious leaders to deceive people. And I know, people are going to get mad, but it was done by the Apostle Paul. The Apostle Paul, the great writer of the Bible that so many, was a liar. Let me repeat that. The Apostle Paul was a liar. Now, how can I stand here and say he was a liar? Because according to the Bible, he said he was a liar. Here, look. 2 Corinthians 12:16. But be it so, I did not burden you, nevertheless being crafty, I caught you with guile. Now this is a guy that's writing the Bible, folks. I caught you with guile. Let's interpret guile. Craftiness, foxiness, slyness, cunning, deceitfulness, hoax, put on, fraud. Something intended to deceive, deliberate trickery intended to gain an advantage. The guy was a liar. And he wrote the Bible. Now, if I came along and said, that guy's full, I don't believe that stuff in the Bible, that's a bunch of lies. That's one thing. But I didn't present that to you. He said it himself, whoever this was, said it himself. I caught you with guile. In other words, I deceived you. I remember one time Joan and I were at a born-again rally of some kind somewhere, and they said, tomorrow night, make sure you come. You will see a miracle of proportions beyond anything. This place will be packed, so get here early. There will be the great miracle. So one of the people that was there was one of the preachers, and we asked, what the heck is that miracle? He said, don't come. They're going to have a big bowl in the center, and everybody's going to put a lot of money in, and they're going to claim that the miracle was that they got enough to build this place. So what they just say, it was deceit, deceitful. And that's what this guy is talking about here. See? He deceived people to get them to believe the way he wanted them to believe. That's the same thing what the government did with the Iraq thing. Oh, we're going to have a nuclear explosion over New York City. Oh, my God. There's going to be all these things coming with chemicals and everything going to be coming in, and we're going to have wear gas masks. Oh, we're going to have to put masking tape on the windows and hide under the desks. Oh, it's crazy stuff. Well, color green, color blue, color red, whatever happened to that? And what was it? It was all deception. Because they had to get everybody to support this thing, and they did. Because people get afraid. So anyhow, deception like that goes on throughout the world. And especially the religious world. I'm not just knocking, Christianity or religion here. It's all over the place. Their followers must believe the way they teach or else. And since they all teach differently, they're all suspicious of one another. And what they do, and they've done since the beginning of time, they fight with one another and they kill one another. And most, if not all, of the wars that we've had are in some way connected to religious beliefs. See, if you follow religion, you simply have no idea whatsoever how the reality of what we call God works. See? Because what happens here is you're dwelling in a physical form. You know, you got a body and your hair and your head. You're dwelling in a physical form and you miss the form of light. In other words, there is a form that you don't even understand encases you. And that is the form of the subatomic, electromagnetism. So you don't know it's there, but it is. And that's what these ancient writers were talking about. And nobody can come to me and say, well, you can't say that they knew about electromagnetism back in those days. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Democritus explained the inner workings of the atom and the electrons in the atom. That was 3,000 years. Who taught him? Zeno. I always love to quote this because this is true. You go into any of the big bookstores, pick up a book on quantum physics, and look in the back, in the index, and you'll see Zeno. Here's a guy that was 3,000 or 4,000 years ago was talking about quantum physics then. Who taught him? So don't tell me that they didn't know about the reality of the subatomic. They did. So the scriptures are very clear, say, if you understand them mythologically, symbolically. They're pointing to a natural phenomenon. When it talks about light in the scriptures, it's talking about electromagnetism, the world of electrons and photons which impact the human psyche, which make us alive. So what has happened, unfortunately, with so many people, and the whole world, is that religion has turned the reality of nature, which is God, nature, into some kind of a fairy tale. Simply because they still follow the superstitions that come out of the Dark Ages. The Dark Ages of Europe, the most terrible time probably in the existence of this world, when religion controlled social institutions. And that's why, you go crazy when you see these people debating and they're all talking about God and all, in order so they can get people to vote for them. Why anybody would want religion involved in government to take us back to the Dark Ages of Europe is beyond me, but that's what happens. We even see that today with activity from the government against stem cell research, because they feel the cell, which is the size of a period at the end of a sentence, is a person. A stem cell is as much of a person as a tire is a car. Everything has to be connected. Once everything is put together, yes. But and yet that little period, with the capacity to do the things that science could make it do, and these terrible, terrible incurable diseases, and those are gifts from nature, gifts from God. But when social and political decisions are made by religious people, that's what you get. It's the Dark Ages. Wipe it away. It's a person. The discrimination against women. Against gay people. When gay people get married, what does that got to do with me? I could care less. It has nothing to do with me, has nothing to do with you. But it's all part of a Dark Ages mentality. Oh, they don't live like we do, so they must, it's all this stuff that has no business interacting in the affairs of people privately. The rejection of the theory of evolution is pure religious Dark Ages mentality. It's all it is. And I watch these guys on television. Everybody put your hand up if you don't believe in the theory of evolution. And they did. And they're going to be president. See? And the only way you come with that is if you go to church and you check your brains at the door. Check your brains at the door and sit there stunned and listen to this stuff. And when I alerted to the light of Edda Karina with the potential of extreme change, the religious people cannot possibly connect it to that story about the seventh angel because they cannot accept the fact that biblical scripture is Greek mythology. And the world has been severely damaged by that error and intent. There shouldn't be any such thing as cancer today, any of those terrible things. But how we've had such obstruction. The United States and Russia spent how many trillions and trillions of dollars making bombs and missiles to protect themselves from one another for years and years. What if that money was all spent to finding cures for these? And they're still doing it now. They're spending $5 billion a day to improve Baghdad, and New Orleans is falling apart. Yeah. You know, I want to talk about something else for a minute. I don't recall how many years ago, yes I do, it was that I proposed to you that you put a green light at your home. Do you remember? We've one at our home, and in fact I'm encouraging Jonah. I think we're going to put one at the front of the house now because we had one at the back. But I first proposed this in 1999. And this is our website page from hiddenmeanings.com. Put a green light at your house. We don't have this one anymore, but this was the one we had. We have another one now. But that was actually there. See? Now we can leave that there. Back in 1999, was not asking anybody to place the green light to signal UFOs. I was asking you to place the green light to signal God, which is more bizarre than UFOs in my mind. But I also made it clear that if God, whatever that is, chooses to come in a UFO, so be it. That's fine. But what really was the significance of that proposal I made to you back in 1999 about the green light? See, when angles of light, same thing as angels, when angles of light from the universe touch the green earth, they create a process called photosynthesis. The term green light, and there is such a term, actually represents the light that comes down from above in the blue and red spectrum to touch the green organisms of the earth. Let me show it to you. I think it's easier for you to see. You see here, these are the invisible rays that you don't see. Cosmic, gamma, X-rays, ultraviolet, and then more invisible over here, long radio, short radio, microwaves, and infrared. These are this part of the spectrum you can see right here. And you have the colors of the spectrum. See? Now, the interesting thing here is that it is this spectrum red and this spectrum blue that when it touches the earth creates the photosynthesis. See? So you have to have those two spectrums have to touch the earth in order for there to be life. Okay? There's a lot of other things. Well, right there, as I said, you see the red spectrum and you see the blue spectrum coming down from the sun. They create a process called ATP. ATP. In other words, as long as the red spectrum comes down and the blue spectrum comes down, hits planet Earth, there is ATP. Now, let's look and see what ATP is that these spectrums have created. ATP, adenosine triphosphate, that's close enough. You're going to want it, adenosine triphosphate, is found in all living organisms and is the main immediate source of usable energy for the activities of living cells. Get this now, nothing can live without ATP. Okay? So when the Bible says God is light and all life comes from light, well, it's true. You know? If you want to refer to God as that, nothing can live without ATP. Nothing can live without green light. By placing a green light in your home, you are signaling this cosmic intelligence called God that you are aware of what is about to take place and that you understand that this new light force touching the earth will bring about a whole new energy for all life. Now, where I should have put this in different colors, but where they said nothing can live without ATP, that's what the Science article was, where I added, this was mine here. Okay. But nothing can live with ATP, and ATP is basically green light, and nothing can live without it. So, even more important than what you read there, that green light at your house is a statement to yourself of your understanding that it is the light that comes to the earth from above, which creates and renews all life. And then you understand more the scripture that says God is light. The light comes down to earth known as zodiacal light, which is also known as green flash. Now, I've never seen this, but they say just at the time when the sun is going down, just as the time as it just disappears, you know, it's not really the sun going down, it's the earth coming up. Did you know that? Do you know the sun doesn't move? It's not, you're not going out to see, I'm going out to see the sun goes down. No, you're not. You're going out to see the earth come up. Because the sun's staying right there and the earth's coming up like that. But anyhow, right at that time there's supposed to be, according to science, this green flash. And I want to tell you something else that's equally important about this. Your body contains hemoglobin, which is part of the hemogroup chemically related to chlorophyll, the green pigment of plants. Okay? And also understand that a bright nebula emits gases in the red or green part of the spectrum. So this is what, you know, when we have this tremendous light that's going to come from Eta Carina, and it is, and it's going to be a lot sooner than later according to science now, it's really going to impact the earth in a big way. I was initially led within myself to tell people to place the green light at the back of the house since the human energy flows up the spine. But, you know, green light, it's something, and if you can't deal with the fact that, oh, gee whiz, you know, that's kind of bizarre, you know. Well, it's not bizarre because it's a scientific fact that green light is what gives us all life, the earth and the light together. Now let me show you a couple of more significant facts about this. And this was, I wrote some of this myself too. What do you tell your friends when you put your green light up at your house and they're sure that you've fallen into the clutches of a dangerous cult? You know, you simply tell them that the green light reminds you that it is light from above touching the green earth that brings new energy. And that we are not at the top of the chain, as we like to make ourselves believe. For the trees can get along fine without us, but we could not exist a minute without them. And this is something that when they talk about global warming, so many have lost sight of. You know, you've got to have shopping centers every place. And when the shopping centers come, the green goes, doesn't it? And I understand it. To me, my recommendation would be that a shopping center would have to be required to have numerous trees in their parking lot. But anyhow, but you see, this is extremely important. The green of the trees gives you the oxygen and gives you light. Let me see what it says here. The next thing. Finally, and this is important too. Jesus in the Bible said that the kingdom of heaven is at hand. The Bible was written in Greek, Old and New Testament. The Greek word for heaven is Uranus, Ouranos, which is English Uranus. The ruling planet of this Aquarian age that we're living in now is Uranus, and Uranus is the green planet. Hey, that's good. So I started that suggestion back in 1999, and how has this come true? I think what has come true should induce you to put a green light at your house. Remember, in the book of Exodus, the people were instructed to place the lamb's blood on the doorpost of the house to signal the angel. Well, I'm proposing you place a green light at your house to signal this angel or angle of light, the angle of light coming down amongst us and soon to be from that seventh angel at a Korean. Let me show you just a bit of what has developed and how, and I remember going back to the days when I talked about the green light and, now what is going on. When I just sit there and stare at these things, I can just show you a bit because I don't want to take this whole thing up showing you pictures off of the internet. But I did look at the internet and they popped up all over the place. And let me show you what I saw. You have the Green Gurus. You have National Geographic's Green Guide. You have I Go Green, Little Changes and a Big Difference. And we go to the next one. You have the Green Festival Radio, the Green Festival videos, and the Green Festival photos. So, all these stuff. And then I started reading and came up and saw this. This is interesting. Movie star Owen Wilson paid a visit to a popular strip club on the west side of Manhattan. The actor showed up not in a stretch limo or a huge SUV, but on a bicycle. And in doing so, Wilson may have delivered the green trend to a whole different industry. But there's a green trend now. Okay, let's look at the next one. Variety reports that the summer blockbuster Even Almighty, starring Steve Carell and Morgan Freeman, is not only sharing marketing dollars with a green initiative, but also was the product of low-carbon shoot. So there's a green initiative in the movie. There's a green initiative in this with this other guy. Let's look at here this guy, Mel Gibson. If Mel Gibson and Arnold Schwarzenegger support environmental causes, is there anyone in Hollywood who hasn't gone green? More important, do their endorsements have an impact? I'm interested in that, but what it says is there anyone in Hollywood who hasn't gone green? In other words, do you see what happened? From that time, and it was, it started, I know nobody knows it. I know nobody knows it but us, but it started here. That when we started talking about it. And sometimes when I think, well, it's true, nobody knows but a few people. When I read the myths of Jesus and I think, well, there's 12 characters hanging around him, so he knew too. But look at the Green Festivals going on. Welcome to the Green Festival 2007, 2008. Washington, D.C., October the 7th, for the Green Festival. San Francisco, California, November the 9th, for the Green Festival. Seattle, Washington, April and 12th and 13th in 2008 for the Green Festival. And let me show you one more thing that I thought was pretty. Are you getting cold in here? Is it chilly in here? You all right? Okay. Chicago goes green in record numbers. At the Green Festivals, we're celebrating what's working in our communities for people, for businesses, and for the environment. Here, green means safe, healthy communities and strong local economies. Green is the color of hope, of social and economic justice, of ecological balance.
Well, Al Gore just finished his house and it's green.
This is green. Yes, Joan said Al Gore just finished his house and it's green. But this is something I want you. I told you about Etta Carina many, many years ago. And now all the scientists in the world have their eyes on Etta Carina. And I told you about this green light back in 1999 when it was not fashionable. And honestly, there are people that I know of who've had that green light on, and now as they start to see this green trend all over the world, then you start to see a fulfillment that came from this little room. And I know, as I said, many people didn't pay attention, but it started here. And it's very important because it should, again, give you confidence that you are here where the word arrives first. Now, I'm almost sounding like one of these, and I don't mean to be that way, but I'm telling you, it happens. And I'll tell you something else, that you will be the first ones to be told of this great change, of the great arrival. One of the great and unusual minds of our generation, of the true life of the invisible realm, was a fellow by the name of Terrence McKenna. He's passed away. He made a comment on his website that I want to share with you. It really sums up the lunacy of all of us who tend to follow as if we're drawn magically to the Pied Piper of Washington. Terrence McKenna said this: "We have wandered into a state of prolonged neurosis because of the absence of a direct pipeline to the unconscious. And we have then fallen victim to priestcraft of every conceivable sort." Terrence McKenna was not the type, he wasn't the type of person that the system could ever deal with. He died in the year 2000. He was a student, he was a teacher. He taught the foundations of shamanism and the methods of spiritual transformation. He was an innovative theoretician and spellbinding orator. He was a powerful voice for the psychedelic movement. Oh yes, he dabbled in psychedelic stuff, drugs. That could frighten people, you know, the psychedelic movement. And yet, if we would be willing to admit it, you know, if we would be willing to admit it, Terrence McKenna, psychedelic and all, was closer to the works of Jesus Christ than even Billy Graham was.
You're really going to get that.
And not only closer than Billy, but any other religious leader I've ever heard of. Basically, this man, who was strange, was telling us the same thing that Jesus told us. There is a power within us. There is a force of good within us. He was telling us that in order to reach and become part of that force, we have to move ourselves away from the leaders of fear, guilt, violence, and war to the realm of the unconscious, where we then can be directed by the super magical power we call God. And his reference to falling victim to priestcraft of every kind is the truest thing that can be said. And we all know it. We are dragged along to submit our money and our mind to religion. Why? Because we chose it? Absolutely not. But because we were born into it. And somebody else chose for us where the truth is. We were dragged along to submit our money and our lives to corporations who have systematically destroyed our environment and the planet Earth in their wild search for profit. We are dragged along, and this is the worst one, to submit our children to the government to be annihilated in wars against innocent people who have done nothing to us, such as Vietnam and Iraq. So if we don't find the realm of the unconscious within ourselves, which is attainable through meditation, then we'll continue to be cannon fodder for their wars. We'll continue to be zombies for their preaching. And we'll continue to be willing customers for their destructive wares. Once you become part of the unconscious, you become part of God, whatever you want that to be. You become part of the higher, and your concerns are for nature, the poor, the oppressed, the sick, the animals. You lose your patriotism for one group, and instead you find yourself a patriot for all of creation. See? All of God's creation, you wave the flag. And that was the ethic of Terrence McKenna. He said something just before his death that is worth looking at. And I want to share it with you now. This is good. He said this: I'll try to be around and about, but if I'm not, then you know that I'm behind your eyelids and I'll meet you there. He died of a malignant brain tumor. His comments on life and death are profound. And just for a moment, maybe we'll look at one of his comments. He says, the world needs to be a more compassionate place. It is not moving toward that as I see it. More and more people are exploited by fewer and fewer people, more and more effectively. And the tools of exploitation, which are advertising and propaganda and all of that, grow ever more powerful and irresistible. That's a profound statement. And it's one that truly sums up the great dilemma that we have here. No matter how bad leaders behave, they will be protected by those of their own group. I mean, what I mean by that is Republicans will protect Republicans, Democrats will protect Democrats. It doesn't matter what's right. It doesn't matter what's wrong. All that matters is their party, their group, your interest, and what is really true and decent doesn't count. Today in this country, as we're sitting here, there is the most sinister problem with the Justice Department in this country that has ever existed. It is illegal beyond words. It has carried out an effort to make sure that the right kind of judges are in place to prevent people who might challenge the government from voting. And yet, those who are part of that party cannot bring themselves to find fault. Though when the other guy was having a sexual affair, that was enough. So every reason that these people concocted to excuse their attacking the Iraqi people is proved false. You demolish the country, you demolish their people, and you still cannot bring yourself to say it was evil because your party did it. And this is the type of thing that Terrence McKenna was talking about. The mind of the average person is totally exploited by the lies and the propaganda of the system. Let's go back and Terrence McKenna again, see what he says here. This is really the challenge for the future. We can build a civilization like nothing the world has ever seen. But can it be human? A human civilization? Can it actually honor human values? It's one thing, the rate of invention or gross national product or production of industrial capacity. All these things are all very well. But the real dilemma for human beings is how to build a compassionate human civilization. The means to do it come into Arcan at the same rate as all those tools which betray it. And if we betray our humanness in the pursuit of civilization, then the dialogue has become mad. This guy, when you read his works, you feel yourself kind of inside, shaking a little bit, and it's like somebody looking you in the eye and saying, hey. So you can look at Terrence McKenna and you can say, as the religious will say, oh, he took psychedelic drugs. But keep in mind that even though he may have, and he did, his philosophy was the philosophy of Jesus. And the philosophy of religion and Christianity is the philosophy of patriotism, not to God's creation, but to one country. Their philosophy is the philosophy of love as long as you belong to their group. Their philosophy is, oh God, we pray for our troops, but kill their troops. And McKenna may have taken psychedelic drugs. But what kind of drugs is the rest of the world taking? Have we not been drugged with the lies and the false promises and the excuses that have placed us into a position where we would actually follow along like sheep those who would lead us into wars and deprive us of the need to expand the God-given stem cell research to heal the suffering? What kind of drugs are we taking that we would follow people like that? And when these people would look at Terrence McKenna and say, oh, he took psychedelic drugs, the facts are that they have fed their flocks the drugs of hate, suspicion, violence, of war. And the words of Jesus Christ then are so powerful when it comes to these people, who would look at someone like this, who is a person of peace and love, and find his fault but not find. Look what Jesus said. Judge not, so you won't be judged. You don't judge him because he was smoking something. For with the same judgment you judge others, you're going to be judged. And with what you measure out to them, it's going to be measured to you. And then he said, and why do you look at the splinter that's in somebody else's eye, but you don't consider the log that's in your own? Well, how can you say to someone else, let me pull a splinter out of your eye while you're there with a log in your own? And then Jesus said this, you're a hypocrite. First take the log out of your own eye, and then you'll be able to see clearly to remove the splinter out of another's eye. Oh, but they say, we go to church every week, we give money, we sing in the choir, we're against gays, we support America, and we're against abortion because it's killing babies. Isn't dropping bombs on people's houses killing babies? And we're against stem cell research as long as one of our family members doesn't have the incurable illness. And mostly we know that our way is the only way to salvation. Everyone else is in the world is following false gods, so we should not mingle with them. And so where does God find the guilt, if there is a God to find guilt? I would say with the one who has the splinter. Oh, excuse me. I misstated. Does he find guilt with the one who has the splinter and talks of peace and love and healing? Or does he find guilt with the one who has the log and talks of war, guilt, suspicion, and isolation? I'll tell you right now, even in a court of law, Terrence McKenna would win over organized religion. You know, I give a lot of thought to the problem of religion teaching the Bible literally, and the wall that is thrown up which prevents people from finding the truth about life and what we call God. That's very important. The reason, I guess, this happens because I receive a lot of emails, and I get months behind trying to keep up and answer people. But these people have been instructed from birth that these biblical stories, which are mythology, are literally true. And I received one from a person named Joseph that I want to share with you. He says, greetings, your approach is refreshing. Do you believe that Noah and his family were the only survivors of a worldwide flood and that their ark, I like the way he spelled ark anyhow, their ark has been found? You know something? And when Christmas rolls around, what do we all say? It's really for the kids. And why is it really for the kids? Because they believe in Santa Claus. But in this case of stories such as Noah's Ark, the majority of adults believe in it, and it is no more true than Santa Claus. And the tragedy of this is that in presenting mythology as literal fact, the people of the world have been deprived of a very important lesson concerning the human mind and the God-given way for us to ride out the storms of life and be lifted upward to the mountaintop of the higher light. And so the question from everyone is not centered around the lesson of the operation of the human mind, but you think they found Noah's Ark on the mountain? I already found a piece of wood. That's who we are. It's not important how many people got killed in Iraq. What's important is how's Paris Hilton doing in jail. Christianity has done a great disservice to their followers by actually changing the Bible from a spiritual book to a historical book. To them, the story of Noah's Ark is ancient history. Throughout the Bible, there are stories of oceans opening up, a talking bush, a talking snake, a talking donkey, a floating steel axe head, angels walking up and down a ladder, people walking on water, people in a furnace with a fire raging, not getting hurt, virgin births, resurrections, over and over again. And immediately when you read that stuff, common sense should jump right up and stare you in the eye and say, whoa, wait a minute, something's wrong here. These things cannot be of what we call God because they're not of nature. And what we call God is the creator of nature. So we have to look at the very same Bible, the very book, and read what it says about itself and its stories. What does the Bible say about the stories of Abraham and Sarah?
If you would like information about hidden meanings, please call our answering service at area code 609-971-0537, and we would be happy to mail the information to you. The center is located at the Village Green Shopping Center, Route 9, Forked River, exit 74 of the Garden State Parkway. Information, please call our answering service at area code 609-971-0537.